You're listening to Indus on BBC Radio Manchester and BBC Radio Lancashire with me, Talib. Now, a study shown to the BBC indicates that an increasing number of white Brits are converting to Islam. The research commissioned by the charity Faith Matters shows it's mostly women converting and that the majority adopt the hijab and have to deal with some hostility from their family. Well, Tony Blair's sister-in-law, Lauren Booth, is one high-profile recent convert. Well, our reporter, Catherine Nye, met one convert from Birmingham.
Life's changed dramatically. I was a rebel before, and then when I become Muslim, I sort of calmed down.
Aisha Uddin recites the Surah Al-Fatiha, the first chapter of the Quran, with close friend Samir Kareem. But Aisha used to be called Laura.
Before I was the jeans, loads of makeup. For me now, obviously wearing hijab, wearing the whole jilbab, it's a dramatic change, but it's a change that I'm happy I've made.
Aisha was studying religion at school and started quietly visiting her local mosque to find out more.
Islam caught my eye and I wanted to look further into it, and I carried on studying it, even after school, living in Birmingham. So I was surrounded by the religion.
Aisha forms part of a growing trend, according to the study by Swansea University for charity Faith Matters. There are no official figures on conversions in the UK, so the numbers have been reached by looking at previous census data, at conversion figures on the continent, and through a survey of UK mosques. The estimate is that there are between 70 and 100,000 converts in the UK. At Regent's Park Mosque in central London, there are many white faces. Conversions happen here every week, largely on a Saturday, and it's mostly women.
Every woman or man who becomes Muslim, if you were to do an assessment, out of 5, 3 or 4 would be women.
Imam Ajmal Masroor says this report comes as little surprise to him.
It's been going on for the last 20 years or more, and more so since 9/11. People are curious, they want to learn more, and they go to the book rather than rely on the media distortion, and they learn that Islam actually is more fulfilling.
Faith Matters commissioned the report to try and get some sense of the number of converts in the UK. Fayez Mughal is the director.
Converts to Islam, particularly white converts to Islam, are exceptionally important in helping to bridge some of the divides.
My family, they wasn't too happy about it. Why change your identity, dress the way you dress?
Aisha says she has a new family now. 2 months ago she had a traditional Asian wedding to a British Bangladeshi man and now lives with the in-laws in North London. She spends her free time with Muslim friends like Samir. Today it's Scrabble with her children.
Being in a society where there's so much bad press, Muslims are bad people, but if you actually get to know these people, they're the most friendliest people ever. I have loads of Muslim sisters and loads of Muslim brothers. I'm proud to be Muslim and I don't care what my family say.
There you go. That's Catherine and I reporting there, speaking to an individual in Birmingham. And as we've heard, there could be many different reasons for converting, but what sort of journey does an individual have to go through to find faith? Lucinda Lavelle from Manchester converted to Islam 4 years ago, and we'll be hearing her story. And I'm also joined by Leon Moosavi from Lancaster University, who's doing a PhD thesis in Muslim converts in the Northwest. Welcome to the programme, Lucinda and Leon. Lucinda, let's start with your story. I mean, what brought you to Islam?
I was born into a family of a Jewish father and a Christian mother. So, and neither of them were particularly religious. So I was very much left to decide my own faith in that sense. They were quite liberal and they wanted me to discover faith on my own terms. I was actually introduced to the church by an elderly auntie who used to take me to church with her when I stayed with her. And I used to find such a great sense of peace and safety in church that I loved church and the idea of it, and as a child it felt a very safe and secure place to be, and I felt a sort of spiritual connection. I loved the goodness of it. As I grew older, of course, and saw as faith, what this faith had done in the world, and certain questions came to me about how could Jesus be a man and a God and be crucified, and so many questions sort of separated me from that sense of spiritual well-being. And I began to look around, see what faiths were offering, but never looked at Islam. Although I lived in Manchester and lived in a community there was a lot of Muslim people around me. Nobody ever talked to me about faith, and I didn't have those close connections with my neighbours really. And it wasn't until I've been on quite a long journey of looking at different faiths and trying to find that spiritual connection again as I had as a child.
So was that what you were looking for, trying to find a connection with something in order for you to believe in?
I believed in God. I wanted to find a route to God that didn't leave me with too many questions that were too difficult for me to handle the answer to. You know, I couldn't believe in everything in Christianity. I couldn't believe in everything in the Jewish faith. I didn't know. You know, there was things in there that contradicted what I felt were right and wrong, and I just couldn't connect with them. Once I got past being a child and asked too many questions, there was too many things that didn't work for me, and it sort of separated me from that feeling of connection. And over the time I was growing up, my politics had changed, and I was, you know, very much into peace, and I hated racism, and I hated inequalities, and there was too many things that I couldn't handle in the two, Christianity and Judaism. And it wasn't until I joined Stop the War movement and became close friends with, you know, brothers and sisters who were, you know, in the Stop the War movement, and they discussed their faith with me, and not trying to convert me, but just really enlightening me. It took me to the mosque, because a lot of meetings used to be in the mosque. I became easy and comfortable in the mosque, and the more I looked into the faith, the more I realised it had so many, it had nothing in it that I could say, well, that doesn't make sense, or that doesn't work, or, you know, I can't agree with that. It was something that I felt really comfortable with, and it gave me a sort of route to a spirituality, and it was an easy transference, to be honest with you. Having always had faith, it wasn't that I found faith, it was that I found a path to follow to allow me to, you know, to worship Allah and feel in tune with my faith.
And how did your family and peers react when you told them first that, you know, I'm now a Muslim?
It was quite difficult, because coming from a, you know, a half Jewish, half Christian family, I think if I'd chosen either of those faiths to take on fully, families would have understood completely and embraced it. And because Islam is quite, how do I put it, foreign, in the sense, you know, obviously the prayers are in Arabic, the dress changes, there's the conduct is not, you know, particularly English, you know, it's not terribly, people encourage you to change your name. I haven't changed my name because I didn't want to do that to my family.
It's something you don't apparently have to do.
I don't have to do it,
yeah.
No, culturally it's sort of, a lot of people who convert do it. But I didn't want to do that.
And it's interesting, though, Lucinda, what you said about when you look around you and you see the people, the dress, the culture, and sometimes it's hard to adopt, to understand. So, in a sense, that becomes a barrier as well, doesn't it? For those people
I think it can do.
Daren't question it.
I think if you don't have to adopt totally the persona of someone from either, you know, Pakistan or from Arabia or from, you know, an Islamic country to be a Muslim. You can be a British Muslim, and as long as you keep all, you know, the traditions and rules, you don't have to change your name to an Arabic name. You don't have to start wearing, you know, I wear clothes that are off the high street, but I wear clothes and I adapt them so that I'm, you know, respectfully covered. But I don't wear saris, and I don't wear, you know, so you can make it part of your own culture. You don't have to totally take on somebody else's culture, and you can, you know, adapt your own culture to fit in with the concepts of Islam.
And just going back to family, was it initial shock, or was it an easy acceptance because you had godliness in you, so to speak?
To be honest, I suppose it was a shock, because, as I say, coming from two faiths within the family, I think it was a sort of, well, you know, we've got a Jewish father, we've got a Christian family, how did you get to Islam?
Yeah.
You know, how did you bypass those two and go? But I come from a very liberal, tolerant family, and they understand that Islam meets all, you know, it meets my needs, and I can adapt my faith to meet the needs of Islam as well. So they understand that it's my choice, and they're not hostile towards it at all. No.
And what about friends? Are they quite accepting of your faith?
That's a mixed response, I think. I think friends who haven't particularly, who felt it was a bit of a threat. It was almost like a rejection of them in some way. A bit, they saw it as, obviously go out, can't eat certain things, can't join in with a glass of wine or anything, and they see it as a bit of a rejection. But real friends have completely, join me now for ice cream, and the real friends have completely accepted it. I think people that judge you, because I'm not I'm not evangelical about it. I don't say, well, you can't have a drink, and you've got to eat halal meat, and you've got to do, I'm very relaxed with my friends, and as long as I keep to my standards, that I don't preach to them. So they've I think they're a bit nervous at the beginning, and the real friends are still my friends.
Okay, well, we'll discuss more with Lucinda, and then also in a moment we'll be speaking to Leon.